Hey Josh,
Good afternoon.
how are you doing today?
Good. Sorry, I had trouble getting the link open there for a second.
Does that first thing in the morning. He's getting old like me.
Yeah. How's things out your way?
Things are going really well. It's nice and warm. Just paid rent for the month, so I'm good to go till February.
Amen.
So, things like that.
World's good. So, what you got for me today, buddy?
What do you need from me today?
Well, I'm doing a presentation. I don't remember. What's your first name again?
Dwayne.
Dwayne. Have we talked before?
Over the years, I think we've had conversations.
That's what I thought. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember for sure, but I sent a presentation I had put together for Titronics, and I don't know if you got to see that at all.
Okay.
I presented at the meeting of the minds for the Gonstead group, and
Okay.
so one, I just was curious if you saw that and if you had any thoughts on it. I could resend it because I'm going to teach that class in January 29th, 28th and 29th.
Where's that at?
It's at my clinic here.
Okay.
We do 5 Gonstead seminars a year. Two of them are up at the Gonstead Clinic in Mount Horeb, and excuse me, two of them are down here, three in Mount Horeb in Wisconsin. And so this is our case management seminar, and we'll probably have a couple hundred people here.
Okay.
And so I'm going to teach. Typically, when we do instrumentation, we use the dual probe, is of course our hallmark scope. But I'm going to teach exclusively on the Titron for this particular seminar.
Okay.
So anything that you got that you want me to share with them in particular from Titronics, I'm glad to do. Um, if you got any presentations that are clinically relevant, these people are clinical. They like the clinical
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So this means that.
Um,
Or if you got any sales going on or promos, I'm glad to throw it at them.
yeah, no, we don't have any promos. I mean, for our friends up there at GDI or Gonstead, it's our normal pricing. We'll give $500 off if uh if we have to. I think $500 off is a good one. So I
Yeah.
do have your presentation here. Let me just run through it real quick. Let me share my screen that way you see what I'm saying. How's that sound?
Sure. And you can do that at your leisure and just
Yeah.
email me some notes.
Well, there's
That'd
there's
be
some
fine.
things there's some things first off. I mean, just seeing it that I can just quickly give you some insight on
Mhm.
just as I scan through it. So I don't think it'll be a waste of time to go through this.
Sure.
And I don't want to waste your time. So this is
No.
not any of that. All right, so we have these lines here. These breakdowns in the blues. I'm glad you've got them in different color gradients.
Mhm.
I stick with strictly red and blue. Um, unless you can quickly tell, is this going hot or is this going cold? Because when you have it over here, this color and that color is the same, even though they're on both sides of the line. Or
Mhm.
you're saying with anything within these is normal, which is green.
Not necessarily. We changed the color gradients because
Okay,
what I was trying to do was look for breaks.
gotcha.
And so like that one at the top where the line's at there,
Yeah,
um, I'm not using it strictly for pattern. I'm trying to look and see the actual breaks in there.
gotcha.
So in that one there, that line, it's actually the right probe where it goes hot there just slightly.
Yep.
It makes that left spot look cold. And so,
So you're
uh,
looking for major differences left and right.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That
And
makes
over what we're looking for is over one segmental region.
right.
And
That
so
makes
what, go ahead.
that makes sense then.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing with those. I call that the tornado.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then obviously adding it is an improvement over this.
Mhm.
You can still see that little bump there, but why not this one?
Yep.
So that makes sense. Myron, Roger, good. Keep them in the conversation. Um, good. Glad you grabbed that from our website. She's amazing. She's pregnant right now, by the way.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's an amazing chiropractor. She and her husband. I was dean of clinics when they were going through school, so they're just amazing, amazing people.
And where are you at, Dwayne?
I'm in Spartanburg.
And what's your relationship with Titronics?
I'm sales and marketing director and part
Okay.
owner. So I'm the future.
That's awesome. I reference at the end, I reference most of everything in here is I get from other people, either Titronics or my mentors from
Yeah.
instrumentation. But I've tried to combine it in a sense that I want to bring the Gonstead people more up to speed, so to speak. So anyway, I've referenced you guys
Yeah.
at the end of this.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Um, yeah, I'm beginning to remember because this is pulled up what October, November. You sent it to us.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. This is all right out of the book. Um,
those
all
we
right.
created from notes from Roger's discussion. So
Yeah.
that's all Roger, but we just drew
Yeah.
it up.
No, that this is actually amazing. This is a tremendous synopsis of what the book from Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College about the physiology of overmeasuring. This is a
Mhm.
great synopsis of that book. Good. This is important to know because of the heat sink. A lot of
Yep.
people don't realize that. That's really good.
I learned that when I was doing
Yeah,
this presentation. I
yeah,
did not realize that.
yeah. A lot of people don't realize that the massive head we have on there can't be anything else but metal, just because of the heat sink. And as soon as you disassociate the receptors and make them movable, you lose
Mhm.
that reference temperature.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes a little bit less reliable.
Yeah, that makes sense. Less variable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So DT deltas. So these are called directs, and this is called
Yep.
the delta.
Yep.
Um,
The big revelation for me on this
mhm.
was those direct temperatures. I have never utilized that like I should have been.
Yeah, I've been teaching for years. This is where the doctor comes in. Is
Yes.
that direct temperature is the raw data. That is exactly. I mean, those are the points that come off of the patient. Everything else is math that you do with the data points.
So one of the things that helped me, I work with Chris Hanlos out of Texas, and he gave me some good notes of what he looked at,
Mhm.
and he learned some things I was looking at. But he said that like when you go to the bar graph, he says you look at the blue bar graph, don't you? And I'm like, no, not very often. But that color bar graph, he said, don't even look at that. That's the worst graph on the
Yeah.
whole machine.
I call the bar graph the kindergarten math. I go through the different layers of math, the kindergarten math, because it's just crayons laying there, and if you just move that, what they're grabbing is 20 to 30 data points and
Mhm.
averaging them, and then comparing that average left and right.
Right.
Not even taking the difference, and it's just really mushy. But as you know now, well, if you don't know the raw data,
Yep.
why did this spike to the right?
In that one, because of the change on the left probe.
Right, but if you didn't see the left or right, everybody's going to say, "Well, the right got hotter." Well, no, the right stayed the same. The
Right.
change
Left got
wasn't on the
cold.
right side,
Yeah.
and so
I
that's why I point out to people when I do the presentation is the delta T over time can tell you pattern, but it doesn't tell you what's going on unless you look at the raw data.
So when you say pattern, here's a question I have for you. 3 separate scans on 3 separate days without intervention would be a quote unquote classic way to develop a pattern. And if I recall, when I was listening to or reading through some of your information, to be in true pattern, not only does the delta T have to overlay, so do the direct temperatures. Is that accurate?
That is accurate because you can have a similar delta, but the directs are doing something completely different.
Okay.
And since the delta is a derived calculation, that's not telling me what's going on in the body. It's telling me a step back in analysis.
That was extremely helpful to me.
Yeah.
Second question along those lines. As I'm trying to break this down and utilize it in the full spine work the Gonstead doctors use,
Mhm.
can you have pattern in regions? So, for example, a lot of times I'll look if I was going to try to develop a pattern, I can develop a pattern maybe like in the cervical to cervical thoracic and then a lumbar, but in the upper lumbar thoracic, it don't match. So
Well, here's the confusing thing about thermography. It is level specific, but it's also systematic. So if you have patterns showing up, it tells you, number one, there's probably a fixation or there's subluxation and interference somewhere in the system.
Mhm.
Your other analyses tells you what the listing is,
Yep.
and over time, that pattern is specific for that listing for that
Right.
client. There's also neurology saying that these uh, temperatures are directly related to the neurology at that level. But we're dealing with the sympathetic nervous system, which is it's going through the sympathetic chain ganglia. It's
Yep.
all of that stuff's coming from the thoracic cord out to the chain, up and down. They have
Mhm.
communication channels and up and ascending and descending tracks within the chain ganglia, but
Yep.
it's still level specific. Here's some research I heard. I can't back it up with a reference, so this is hearsay. But a neurologist in the medical field, who's one of the leading people in dysautonomia, he practices over in Greenville, South Carolina. I asked him, I said, are there paraganglionic fibers from the cord out to these capillary beds? He goes, absolutely. He goes, we've removed the chain ganglia and the sympathetic nerves still get signals to their target without the without the ganglia that were surgically removed.
That's crazy.
I said, okay, now you're talking about innate finding a way, whether it's over nerves or anything else. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about, but those
Yeah.
signals, those signals end up where they were intended to be, even if we surgically remove the chain ganglia. Because there are individuals walking around without chain ganglia. Somehow they developed without it, and they're functioning perfectly well in an autonomic world. And
Hmm.
when you look at their autonomic nervous system, even without the chain ganglia.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we have to respect innate's ability to control the body and balance the body, but we also have to respect it's the sympathetic is not really concerned with that level. It's concerned with the system as a whole,
That's
right?
awesome.
And so it's this delicate dance. Is this specific for C2 the ESR? I need more information.
Mhm.
If that's the listing you found with all your other checks, then absolutely for this patient, that's pattern. That always means ESR for that person.
Hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. I can't say that I've watched close enough that one listing always shows the same pattern because I obviously don't watch enough patterns. That's my issue.
Right. Well, and with the new levels of analysis that we put in the new software, we're
Mhm.
taking a lot of guesswork out of pattern development.
Hmm.
Did you know that this flat line could also be pattern?
Uh, well, I assume that it could be. I mean, you don't know looking at one graph, right?
Right. I mean, when you ask me the question, I'll say, well, obviously, but before that, I would have never looked at a flat place as a pattern. I'm always looking for the bumps.
Oh, for sure. I've seen,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get that. Like a real chronic case, especially when I see hardware on some people, you'll see more flat
Oh,
lines.
yeah.
Yeah, because the autonomic nervous system don't know what to do with it.
Yep. Yep. So, and then it always goes back to when people start asking me these highly diagnostic, give me the answer as quick as possible questions. I'm like, let's step back. What is innate trying to do? It's trying to balance. It's trying to adapt with balance, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So it's trying to do everything it can on a million times a second timetable to balance its reaction to everything or to adapt to everything coming at it in a balanced fashion. So we're always looking at getting balance back in the system. If on a keyboard, no matter what key I pressed, I always got a middle C sharp, that's stuck. That's pattern.
Right.
So when I play the keyboard and each key, no matter how hard I press or how light I press, plays the appropriate note at the proper volume, that's not stuck. That's adaptive balance. That's what it's
Right.
supposed to do.
Yep. Makes total sense. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, find it, accept it, fix it, leave it alone, see you next week. I love that. Um, that most people forget the accept it part, and I appreciate you putting that in there. And as one of the things that I don't see in a lot of other people's presentations, I do appreciate it about you, is the major purpose of thermography is to know when not to adjust.
Yeah. Hardest thing
Leave
to
it alone. I know it sucks right now because how bad you're feeling and you're puking up all over the place, but with no
do.
subluxation, your body's actually functioning as intended.
Hey, Doc, are you recording this by chance?
I am not. I'm
Oh,
bad at that.
crap. Hmm.
I can start recording.
Yeah, just hit this record button just because. And if you don't mind, send that to me. I'm
Yay! How about that?
awesome. If you don't mind sending me those, I'd appreciate it. Then I
More
can
than
make.
happy to. More than happy to. Um, yeah. On these degrees of significance, that's
Mhm.
actually in a paper, and I'm wondering. I think I sent you all the papers that I have. There's actually a reference for that, and it's a medical reference.
I apologize. I've gotten so much stuff from folks from Titronics. I never know for sure if it's coming from you or I should pay more attention, but I
It's okay.
appreciate all that.
And it's probably all duplicates. I can't tell you how many duplicates I have in my folder.
Yeah, I know how that
Roger
feels.
comes from before computers, and so it's interesting how I receive things sometimes. The NCM function is fun, especially for the Gonstead people. The new scan always shows the NCM at the top as well as the breaks in the paper. I don't know if you have a chance to try the cloud software yet.
No, that was the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. I am curious in getting that implemented, what the costs are, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So
It's 49 a month
that's not bad at all.
now, and we take care. We babysit the database. Everything's updated every time you log on, um, and you can use it in each room without having to do the complicated folder share and in-house database management.
Well, if you can put me down for getting set up with that, just have someone contact
Sure.
me. And at some point I need to get a third gun.
Then that's fine too. We'll take good care of you since you're teaching for us. I'll even give you an extra 500, so it'll be 1,000 off.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to get a third gun. That'd be great.
Yeah. The if you just go to titronics.com, it's right there on the page, front page, how to sign up.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. And then contact me when you're ready to buy your scanner, and
Okay,
I'll make sure I get the that invoice pushed through at that 1,000 off.
appreciate it.
Yeah, all this is really good stuff, obviously. Yeah, there's also I read someplace. Well, there's the anecdote about when Thompson was dean of clinics, and he had a student say, "Listen, you're teaching us in class that when the autonomics are shut off, that side goes cold. But in scanning class, you're telling us if there's interference that it goes hot. So we want to know which is right."
Hmm.
Thompson's like, "Ding, you're right. Let me go talk to BJ about that." And so he went in and they presented the case, physiologically, all this stuff. And BJ looks up, he goes, "Well, that may be right, but," and he slams his hand on the table, "as long as I'm around, it's going to be hot side is the problem." And he left the room. What we found is if there's a cold break, one of the sides goes cold,
Hmm.
that's an acute subluxation pattern.
Okay.
If the break is because one side goes hot, that's a chronic subluxation pattern.
Hmm. And
So the
what?
break may be to the same side, but
Mhm.
why is it breaking to the right? Is it because did the left go cold or did the right go hot?
Right. Sure.
So you're going to get the same delta, the
Yep.
same neuroscan because all it's
Yep.
showing is delta.
Yep.
But why is it going to that way? Well, now that we know that we're looking at the raw data, we can say, well, it's because that's how it went cold. Well, then that's an acute, recent subluxation that's in the system. But if it's because something went hot, it's because the body's starting to adapt and try to correct it. And so there's more inflammation in that area, causing that kind of reaction.
That's cool. And that's theoretical in terms of what you understand versus based on how the autonomic nervous system works, et cetera. That's, I would say, theoretical yet, right?
Um, that is something that I've seen published.
Hmm.
So again, it's not in front of me. Um, but right now it's like, okay, this is what we're understanding. I would definitely put it as a theoretical and based upon the physiology that we're understanding now.
Yeah.
Uh,
If you ever run across that or think
yeah.
of that, I'd love to see that because one of the main glaring problems with the Gonstead work, of course, is our instrumentation chapter. And so part of what I'm working with our different groups is to, and along with some of my mentors, they are definitely forward-thinking people.
Mhm.
Um, what he was doing break analysis was way ahead. And he learned that, of course, from people before him.
Right.
But our understanding of where that break's coming from in physiology, you guys' instrument is the cat's meow as far as I'm concerned. Especially in the last year, the more I realized that those direct temperatures are right there because we've done that for years with single probes. We got a number of single probes. And I'm like, well, hell, this thing's got the single probes right there. And my favorite part is if you click that line, like the blue bar graph is limited because it's too broad of a range up and down. But if
Yes.
you click the line on the line graph and then you hold that and you scroll up and scroll down, in the upper left hand and right hand corner gives you those temperatures. That is fantastic. And to
Wait
me,
until
that's how we could do some real research on instrumentation.
wait until you see the new data analytics. There's 3 levels above that we do
Yeah,
now.
that's
I'll
awesome.
show you when we get done here.
Okay.
So all that's there, nothing changes. Then you need to check that. Yep, 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 yep. And the machine is a machine. It's a highly precise machine. It needs to be recalibrated. Those lenses are plastic Fresnel lenses. I don't
Mhm.
know if you know what a Fresnel lens is. It's a bunch
No.
of bumps, so it
Mm-mm.
collects dirt, and they, after a while, you just can't do anything, but you have to replace them. All
And
this
what
stuff
what
is
fre- what frequency would you say replacing?
every 3 to 5 years. We need to clean and calibrate. We
Okay.
take it apart, make sure everything's connected directly. That's awesome. Um,
Do you know Dan?
yeah. Um, um, every 3 to 5 years, it needs to be cleaned and calibrated,
Okay.
and it's not that much money. It renews the warranty. Um, because we take it apart and put new lenses, make sure the barrels are in right, gives it a new set of tires.
Yep.
Good to go. Yeah, all this stuff is Gonstead specific. You're gonna love what we can do with this. Yeah, dude, done a great job. Um,
Sometime if you'd ever want, before I lose you off the phone, we do, like I say, we do a couple seminars here, three in Wisconsin. One's called the Extravaganza. If you'd ever be interested in coming um, to present, I mean, you obviously know way more about this stuff than I do.
yeah.
Feel free, just reach out to me and I'll make sure we set something up.
One thing I would really like to see here.
Yeah.
Um, Chris Harmon is our programmer.
So how do you spell that name?
Harmon.
Chris,
Harmon. Chris Harmon.
Harmon.
Without him, nothing here would be there.
He's the programmer, you
He's
said?
the programmer.
Okay. And
Mark,
your name on there too, then?
no, I don't care about my name on there.
I'll put you on there.
Uh,
What's your title?
I'm sales and marketing director,
Okay.
education coordinator, whatever you call me.
Okay.
Roger obviously was the founder and developer and main engineer, but without Chris, the we wouldn't have what we have today. Mark and Ellen
Right.
are great at building them and repairing them,
Mhm.
and they've spent a
Mhm.
lot of time and investment up there with Gonstead's. But Chris needs to be mentioned.
I apologize. I'll
No,
gladly
you
do.
didn't know, and I know why you didn't know, and it's okay. It's not your fault.
Yep.
Okay, does that make
Yep.
sense?
You bet.
Okay, so let me stop sharing that. Let me close this out and let me share again and show you what's going on. So I'm going to show you my screen. Because okay, so I can't right now make it much bigger. We're going to load a patient. And this is why I use red and blue. It's really easy to understand right away.
Mm-hmm.
This over here is the pattern. I picked something and made it pattern. So I can see here everything compared to it. Make sense?
Yep.
All right, let me take another patient. That's not a good patient for what I want to do. That was not either. Dang it, come on. There we go. See anything different?
The length of the graph, the color switched. Yep.
And you see these areas here?
Mm-hmm.
I can actually
Oh.
select areas that I want to be. Then I can also clear them out. Well, that's not right. That wasn't that one. I can select where I want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
There and there.
Mm-hmm.
And from here to here. From here to here. And when I go back to my big view, guess what? That's where they are in everybody's.
So to keep your eye drawn to that area, is that what you're getting at?
Right. So I'm saying this is an area of concern. Now, the interesting thing is I have a pre and a post scheduled here. You see these numbers here?
Yeah,
Probably not very clearly.
I can see them.
Okay, there's an A, there's an R, and there's a P.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolute slope comparison, the relative slope comparison, and a Pearson analysis of the slope in this area.
So I don't know anything about that stuff.
Absolute slope is it sloping left or right, and by how much?
Yep.
Relative is when you look at the curves, how congruent are the curves?
Mm-hmm.
And Pearson does a lot more stuff than that. So this is only a 25% correlation for absolute slope, only a 52% correlation with relative slope, and only a 3% correlation for the Pearson analysis.
So is this comparing just these two graphs or all the
These two
graphs?
graphs right here.
Okay.
So let's say the yellow one is my standard, or what I've selected as
Your
pattern.
Yep.
This is the area I've selected as the pattern area. This is saying you're not in pattern here.
Gotcha. I get what you're showing me.
Yeah. Over here, though, there's a 63% correlation on absolute, a 74 on relative, and a 70 on Pearson.
That's cool.
So I can pick these out, and over here I have a negative 90 on Pearson. That probably is not pattern. Okay.
Yep.
Exit out of it. I'm not set a pattern on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this guy. I'm going to do a set as pattern.
Did you right click that to do
I
that?
did right click,
Okay.
toggle pattern. Now it's pattern. I'm in absolute slope. It's showing me on the delta that this pre was only this. These don't really match. So that may not be the best area to look at. But it tells me right here the percentage and the absolute slope. I can change that to Pearson, and I can
Mm-hmm.
change that to relative. So I can see at a quick glance, compared to what I've said as pattern, how are
Mm-hmm.
these guys doing?
So the second graph would say that they need to be adjusted more than the third graph.
There's a possibility, yeah, probability.
Higher percentage, higher
Yeah,
percentage.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I just arbitrarily pick these, okay?
Sure.
So I'm going to undo. I'm going to edit scan. I'm going to take it off pattern. Now I'm going to take these two because these two are pre-scans, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hit enter because I've got those two selected. I'm going to clear lines. I'm going to clear everything, okay?
How do you clear when you clear everything?
Well, you have to make the lines active, which is the L.
Yeah.
So I've
Click
hit the
on.
K and all this. So if I make the lines active into line
Mhm.
mode, then I can clear it. Okay.
Yep.
So there's nothing here. I have two graphs. If I hit the A button, automatically chart or automatically compare the slopes that are similar. what this does is it takes these two lines and shows me automatically, mathematically, areas of comparable slopes.
Hmm. So if you were looking at this one, what would this one tell you?
Well, this one would tell me, okay, I see why the slopes are here, but I don't agree with that. And so I would go into line mode and I would right click and get rid of those two areas because
So you
that's not right.
so you
This,
clean the data.
yeah, so this is probably not right either.
Yep.
That one pretty close. This one not so much. Not so much. All that whole thing there is.
Yep.
What I would probably do is get rid of these intermediary lines. I need to get rid of, we'll click the wrong button. So I would get rid of these intermediary lines here. It's getting rid of more than that. And then I would put that there and get rid of that. So that whole area right there looks similar.
Right.
That's similar, but it's not close. I'm gonna get rid of that, not that, that probable, no, that no. Um, yes, no, no, no. So that's probably how I would look at this until I got more data.
So even though you probably couldn't say that all three of these lines are in pattern, the ones that are highlighted, so like the top one on the left, that's in pattern on the left side. The one in the middle is in pattern in the middle and on the right side. And then the bottom one's in pattern just in that one spot and then a bigger spot on the right. In
You
those
have to
regions.
remember, pattern is a yes and no thing. Are we in pattern? Are we stuck or are we not?
So this one's not.
I would say this compared to, because I chose these areas, there's a high correlation here of what's going on. So I would say if somebody came in and this was what I had determined was their pattern,
Mhm.
I would say there's a pretty good high correlation that they might be in pattern. I would use my other analytics to verify that.
Even though the top delta T doesn't match,
Right.
and even though the right direct temperature doesn't match, you'd still say, so basically anybody in pattern is someone that's not adapting.
Bingo.
So you don't have to
Not
worry
adapting with
about
balance.
like the classic pattern, you don't have to have all three overlay everywhere.
Right.
Because like when you go back to the old upper cervical days, you just do the cervical scan. It is much easier to get someone in classic pattern until you start looking at the whole picture. And that answers my question because I feel you are in pattern in regions. The
Mhm.
body's got to be if you have a subluxation, even from a break analysis perspective. So,
And that's advanced thinking. So in martial arts, when you get a white belt in,
mhm.
let's punch the target. Punch the target. Make sure your arm is straight. Just punch the target. All I want you to do is get motion going. Okay, now you're green belt. You've been doing this for 6 months. We're going to talk about starting position. We're going to talk about rotation. We're going to talk about penetration.
Yeah.
A punch, we're starting to break this thing down that we just knew as a punch into its components and saying it's much, much, much more complicated than just punching the bag.
Mhm.
Now we're going to punch it correctly. And then when you get to be a black belt, there's no counter motion. It's all the same hand.
Yeah.
And then when you get to be a master, you get counter again, and it becomes this massive thing is, yeah, punch is just a punch to an eighth degree master instructor, but it's just a punch.
Right.
Pattern is something that we use in the same fashion. So
Yeah.
are they in pattern? Yes, if you understand that pattern means they're not adapting in a balanced state
Right.
or in a balanced fashion. Now we can take that apart and say left, right, up, down, segmental, whatever, but it still comes down to, are you punching the bag?
Mm.
Are they in pattern or not? Does that make
Right.
sense? Does that help a little bit?
It's great. That's what excellent. Yep.
Now, here comes the fun part. So let's say I have like 5 or 10 or 15 of these. And I wanted to say, okay, what would be a really good representation of all of these graphs? I hit the M key and it makes a third graph. See what it did here
Mm-hmm.
and here. And then when I escape out of it, it says, do you want me to make that composite scan pattern? And I say, yes, please. So now we have a scan that's completely not a real scan. It's not real data. It's
It
a
was
composite
generated,
of the ones I chose to develop pattern from.
right?
Now I'm using that composite to compare other things to.
Hmm, that's cool. So it's refining your pattern methodology or,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. So
that's neat.
probably not the best case to show you because there was only two pre's and they were done probably 2 minutes apart. Not the
But
best case.
for a guy like me,
Mhm.
who, but when I get rolling in a day, I put the Titron on the wall. And when I run into, I've got certain people I Titron every visit,
Yeah.
but the majority of my people, I'm scoping, I'm classic, palpate, check the x-ray, fix them out the door. But for me, in a realistic fashion, you tell me if I'm thinking too far outside the box here. If every time I evaluated a patient, like if I stop and do an exam or an exam and an x-ray, or sometimes I'll just have them do some paperwork, do an oswestry or this or that. If I ran the Titron on them and then kept modifying that composite scan over time, that would give me an objective measure of the autonomic nerve system in a realistic way in my practice, or is that not a good utilization of that?
I think that's asking too much of the modification tool or that
Okay.
that mod tool.
Yep.
That's really good for like if I my normal procedures, you come in, identify you as a new client. It's like, listen, one of the things we do here is scan. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Here's your paperwork. Okay, come back here. I'm going to do a scan. Now we're going to talk.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to ask me a question. I'm going to ask you a question. Do another scan. Okay, we have
Gotcha.
3 scans that are 5-10 minutes apart.
Yep.
If something's not responding to stress, it's going to show.
Yes.
And then I do it afterwards every visit. I do pre and post every visit.
Mm-hmm.
That shows me and the client that change is taking place.
Gotcha.
Remember this curve here? It was stuck, and we did this work on you, and now it's not as prominent.
Yep.
The body's responding already. So
Yep.
I've got, when you come back, let's see how it's taken and adapted it and absorbed it to make correction. So
Got it.
I do it pre and post every visit. I do only cervical scans because I choose not to disrobe. We have an open office concept here.
Yep.
Um, so I use it in that hybrid of I know it's showing me specifically for the cervical spine what's going on, but I also know
Mm-hmm.
generally it's showing me overall is their balanced adaptation.
Gotcha.
And so I'm using it in both ways. So I'm doing the pre and post every visit, and I'm using it to show me specific cervical as well as overall general. And then I do my leg checks, I do my palpation, I do uh, other stuff that I was taught and absorbed over the 30 years I've been doing this to verify and then pinpoint the subluxation.
Right. So a more realistic use of that composite you're saying is on that first visit. If you do those 3 scans, then you could use it in that instance, but not over like a 3-month period. That's not
Right.
as valuable. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Gotcha.
So this gives you again a little bit more, another 3 levels of analytics over what you're using right now.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, 2 case studies. One is a guy had been coming in for 2 years, and he come in once a week, once every 2 weeks, and he came in on a Friday. He came in on a Monday, and he came back on a Friday. He goes, "I need you to check me, doc." And I checked him, and he's usually kind of like this one here,
Mm-hmm.
within 1 or 2 deviations, little curvy. His was as smooth as you can be, and just gentle 2 slopes.
Okay.
It was 2 to 3 degrees of deviations off. I took the can 3 or 4 times. I'm like, okay, listen, something's going on in your body on a sympathetic. Your body's not responding well. You need to be extremely aware of what's going on and go get immediate help if anything feels funny. On Sunday, he had a major heart attack.
Jeez.
So the sympathetic nervous system was already aware that something was going on.
Yep.
How can you tell me thermography is going to diagnose a cardiac arrest? No. But
Tell you something's
because
wrong.
everything was totally different,
Yeah.
I gave him that warning, and it may or may not have saved his life.
Can
And
you
it
bet?
happened about 3 or 4 months ago too to another guy who comes in 3 days a week. And he would come in he'd come in 8 days a week if we were open.
Right.
Um, And his like, I'm like, Tom, something's not right. Something's just not right. You need to go. Something tells me you need to go get something checked out. And he went and got checked, and he had a cyst on his kidney that needed to be taken care of. No, no flank pain at all, nothing at all. Just his scan was off. So this does give us a big picture of what's going on in the body, but it also gives us that level specific information that we
So,
crave.
so big picture, systemic specific, and level specific.
Yes.
When you talk about level specific, do you ever find that you can look at a graph and go, there's a break, the way that we would teach it in the Gonstead world?
Absolutely.
And what are you seeing when you see that?
Again, exactly what you guys are looking for. Where's that? Where do left and right break from each other? I mean, that's what a break is, right?
Mhm.
If our tires are aligned perfectly, we go to the left, we go to the right, doesn't matter. That center line is going to be the same. It's when do we break that alignment? When do we break that uh traveling the road together? And
There's
that's where something needs to be looked at.
Yeah. So if these go to the left and to the right, the center line stays the same.
Mhm.
But if this goes left and this one goes right, then you get
Yep. So when we look at this one right here,
Mhm.
let me back out of this real quick. So if I take off the that right in here, that looks pretty good, right? We're within a tenth of a deviation, right?
Sure.
If I add in this, you can see there's red and blue here. That means to me immediately that tells me that the left is going hot and right is going cold. There's an imbalance here. That's what I'm looking for when I look for a break.
Yeah.
When I use the delta T here, I'm looking for whether red and blues are not the same.
Gotcha.
If
So
we go
once you get into an all red area or an all blue area, that's not as indicative to
right,
you.
so right here, okay, that's 2 deviations off, but both sides are going hot, so that means there's kind of congruent, right?
Mhm.
But here, I mean, the temperature is almost the same, but you've got that deviation. So this is how I use the hybrid delta T with only 2 colors, is I look for that horizontal incongruency.
And that in that instance there, it's because the right side's going cold.
This is going cold as this one's going hot.
Right.
So you have both at the same time
Gotcha.
compared to their average on that day.
So there, where there's red and blue together,
Mhm.
that blue is just telling you what's going on in the direct temperature on the right,
Yes.
and the red is just tell you what. So you've got one side going cold and the other side going hot. I got you.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
I've been this graph of all of them has been the one that's messed with my head more than anything. Because as soon as they started throwing the colors up there, I'm like, what are you?
That's why I keep it to red and blue.
Yeah.
Because what are we looking for? We're looking for this break.
Mhm.
And a break in, from what I understand in Gonstead thermography, is when left and right decide to go different ways.
Well, it's just, when you get a deviation, the delta T, which is the instrument
Yeah.
I use, just like a nervoscope, it's only showing you the delta T.
Well, that's
So,
true.
yes. So what I was getting at is and I've been teaching this since I've been using this more, but there are instances, and we've known this for years. You run the scope down and you can palpate with the scope, and where one probe will ride through and
Mhm.
the inflammation holds the other probe up, and then that follows through,
Yeah.
and you can see the break. Now, if you run that down through and just hold it straight, you can very often see the break, but not always.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens is if you got if it's pulling one way or the other, that's fine. But if they break in different directions,
Still
it
zero.
that's right, and the delta T will miss it in that instance.
Right. And that's why I love, and I tell people, this is where the doctor lives, is on that left and right raw temperature.
Mhm.
If you want to
Yep.
be a technician, you'll let the computers tell you what to do. But if you want to be a doctor, you got to know the raw temperatures. You got to know the raw data.
Yeah, I agree. That's why for several years I really didn't use the Titron much because I kept watching this middle line and the damn bar graph, and I'm like, well, I can tell you that that's not telling me what I need to know. So I just focused on the stuff that was. But now that I better understand it, of course, it was telling me what I needed to know. I just I didn't
Well, people
understand
like
it.
you and people that are going around and have a renewed interest in thermography, and are seeking out the truth and how to use it and what it does and what it doesn't do, and then sharing it with their colleagues, this is going to bring a revival back to people using it correctly.
I hope so. And we just need to be better informed because I honestly, I never lost an interest in it, but my understanding
Yeah.
definitely was not where it should be. And so there's questions like in the Gonstead world for sure. And that instrumentation chapter has always bothered me because some of that, the way they describe it and the anatomy, it's just Gonstead was really good in some things and he was good in that chapter to a degree, but there's other stuff that just, we know
Well,
better.
when was it when was that section last updated?
That's books from the 70s.
Well, and what does he say in his introduction to his books?
Continue my work.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the problem, is we've not, as a profession, bothered to continue this work that's in
I agree
chiropractic.
100%. The
We'll
old
go and
timers are tough. The old timers are tough.
yeah,
It takes
we'll go and dumpster dive in the medical world and take stuff that they've thrown away and claim it as our newest
some
brightest
technology.
technique.
Yeah.
But we haven't bothered to stick with what we created. I mean,
Hmm.
this thermography thing is 100% chiropractic.
Yeah.
So why have we abandoned it? I don't understand. I don't understand. So
Yeah. You're
here's
preaching the
a
choir.
worst case scenario. I saw it at an event in Texas. Older guy, been practicing 60 years. Says, I need to borrow your scanner. And I said, great. Scanned a kid, went over there, said, yep, SRP. Bam. Go, you're healed, buddy. See you next conference. And he walked away.
Yeah.
And I went to him, I was like, does he see you regularly? He goes, no, I've never seen the kid before in his life. I don't even know his name is. I'm like,
Yeah.
how did you know off the scan it's an ASRP? He's like, because it had that little bump there.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do a leg check. He didn't do a palpation. He didn't do anything. He did a scan. And I feel sorry for the kid because I don't know what school he went to. I don't know how he's going to be. If that wasn't an ASRP, how are you going to recover from a chiropractically induced atlas subluxation, man?
Man-made. They're out there, boy. Way too many of them.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I'm with you 100%.
did I give you enough information?
This was great, Dwayne. Really great.
Okay,
If you don't mind sending me those recordings, I'll keep making notes. And then if I got questions, if you don't mind, I'll direct them your way.
please do.
I think you're probably one of my better resources, obviously.
Well, the only within chiropractic, within Titronics, I'm the only chiropractor.
Yeah. And so
So
you understand what we're talking about.
yeah,
The other people are more technical, which is great, but I need
yeah.
someone that thinks like we do. So I really appreciate your time.
The only other person that I know that's got more information about Titron specifically and about thermography is
Mhm.
Dr. Bill Amalu.
I've heard that name, but I don't.
He's got a diplomat in thermography. He wrote most of our older textbooks, and he's retiring, but he's still on our payroll as our chief researcher and consultant.
Okay.
So he would also be a great resource to. That's where most of my stuff comes from.
Okay. Well, I sure appreciate it. And like I say, I'm still learning all of this stuff, but
Yeah.
in the last year especially, but the last several years, I continue to learn. And one of the questions I always get, and I'm very hesitant because of what you just said. We see that in the Gonstead world all the too. They're like, oh, I take an X-ray, I do Gonstead. No.
Well,
And
my question is, okay, what's your definition of what are we looking for to begin with?
yeah.
And they're like, well, vertebral subluxation. I'm like, what's the definition of vertebral subluxation? MOPI. I'm like, okay, X-ray. What does it tell you? M and O. Okay, that's at most half of the definition. You're gonna adjust just because M and O, that makes you an orthopedics. And same thing, if you're just doing the scan, all you're getting is interference.
Right.
Where's that interference coming from?
Yeah.
If you don't have the other half of the equation, you're now a neurologist and not doing chiropractic work. We must have both halves of the equation before we do chiropractic work.
100%.
So,
And one of our problems is we get the same thing. People might watch someone walk and go, "Oh, you got to fix the right hip,"
mhm.
or they'll take a scanner and they'll run a scan and go, "Oh, fix right there," like you said. And so in the Gonstead worlds, people like the digital stuff and they want to replace that with break analysis. And the problem is half of them can't do it proper with a dual probe. And so, you know, to work that into our world properly is important,
Yeah, it's
because the
funny.
last thing we need is more watered down chiropractic. It's a huge problem.
We have that force, that adjustment simulator that
Mhm.
Mark and Ellen make, and it measures force over time. And so it's a, all these, yeah, that's just, I don't need that to tell me how I'm doing. And they get on, and these chiropractors have been in practice 30, 40 years, can't replicate the
An
same
adjustment.
force 2 or 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's digital. I'm not worried about digital. I'm just gonna stick with what I feel. Like, oh, innate's pretty powerful, and you've done a good job so far. But you know, most professionals have coaches. Most professionals continue to hone their craft.
Yep. That's a baseball player that doesn't want to know their batting percentage.
Yep, yep.
All right. Well,
Anything else?
I no, I really appreciate it. I'll be in contact with you, and if you need something, don't ever be afraid to holler. I told you, like when I sent that out, if you guys need anything off that, you're welcome to it. I know you got it all, but
Well, and I sent you a link, I think, to Dropbox that has all of my presentations in it.
crap,
So
I
if
got
you need
to find
anything
it.
off of that, references
I'll look for that.
and stuff, please do that. I'll go ahead and um yeah, I'll resend that email I sent back to you, so you have that link.
That'd be great.
And then
Who all can I share this recording with? Like I got like
anybody,
my intern. Okay, I
anybody.
appreciate that.
Um,
Be better coming from the horse's mouth than me
yeah, and
regurgitating.
I don't think I said anything inappropriate about anybody.
Nope. Nope.
Um, I specifically didn't mention names or situations internally. Yeah, so I think we're good.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right, man. Love you lots. If you need anything, just holler.
You bet. Happy New Year.
Yes. Yes.
Bye.